When the noise of life finally fades away, you face the truest test. It's not about money, trophies, or the quick claps of people around you. The real test comes in that quiet moment when the show is over. No crowd, no spotlight, no mask to hide behind. That's when solitude arrives. It doesn't come gently, and it doesn't pretend. It stands before you like a mirror that shows everything as it really is, with no sweet lies to make you feel better. It doesn't ask you who you wish to be. It shows you who you are. And for many, that truth is unbearable. Because in solitude, there is no camouflage. The roles we play, the stories we tell ourselves, the excuses we weave to keep from confronting our fears, they all dissolve in silence. What remains is raw, unpolished, and often uncomfortable. Yet within that discomfort lies the doorway to the very freedom we secretly crave. We spend so much of life running toward approval, running into relationships, running from the dread of being left with nothing but our own thoughts. But solitude chases faster. You can surround yourself with friends, scroll endlessly through screens, flood your hours with endless noise. But when the lights dim and the voices vanish, there you are again, confronted by the self you've avoided. That is the point of reckoning. What most people don't realize is that solitude is not the absence of company, but the absence of illusion. You can be surrounded by a crowd, held by someone's embrace, showered with affection, and still feel hollow inside. That hollowness is not caused by others failing to give. It is born from you not knowing how to sit with yourself. The real emptiness comes when you close your eyes at night and discover that the only voice left is your own, and it feels like a stranger's. This is why dependence on approval is so dangerous. Each smile from another, each compliment, each nod of acceptance becomes like oxygen borrowed from someone else's lungs. You start to live as an addict to validation, measuring your worth by how others see you. And the tragedy is that in doing so, you sell your freedom. You trade authenticity for applause, individuality for comfort, your true self for an illusion that fits the expectations of others. Solitude becomes the enemy you try to escape, yet the more you escape, the tighter its grip. For solitude is patient. It waits at the edges of your life. You may bury yourself in entertainment, in shallow conversations, in endless striving, but sooner or later, it will find you. And if you are unprepared, it will crush you. Because solitude has no mercy for lies. It exposes the dreams you borrowed from others, the masks you stitched together, the fragile walls you built around your identity. It strips you bare until you stand face to face with the version of yourself you've always avoided. But here lies the paradox. Solitude is not here to destroy you. It is here to reveal you. Yes, it feels like an executioner when it tears away illusions. But in truth, it is the only teacher that shows you the difference between what is borrowed and what is real. Those who dare to endure its weight find a treasure no crowd can give: authenticity. And authenticity is the seed of true freedom. The person who learns to enjoy their own company becomes unshakable. They stop begging for affection, stop fearing abandonment, stop molding themselves to fit into fragile molds. They become whole. And when they connect with others, they do so not out of need, but out of abundance. They do not seek to fill a void. They seek to share their overflow. That simple shift changes every relationship. Love becomes genuine because it is no longer born from dependence, but from choice. Look closely at the irony. Solitude, which most treat as a prison, is actually the key to freedom. It is the filter that shows you who truly belongs in your life. For those who cannot bear solitude, relationships are merely anesthetics against emptiness. But for those who have befriended solitude, relationships are canvases where creativity, truth, and love are painted. Ask yourself with honesty, how much of your life is driven by your true desires, and how much is driven by fear of being alone? The answer, if you dare to face it, might unsettle you. Yet within that discomfort lies the key to a freedom few ever discover, the key to emotional independence. Imagine solitude as a dark room. At first, it terrifies. The silence is heavy, and the unknown presses in from the corners. You want to flee, to light a candle, to fill it with sound. But if you wait, if you allow your eyes to adjust, shapes emerge. Slowly you begin to see what was hidden all along. That is the gift of solitude. It reveals truths invisible in the chaos of noise. Think of the great minds of history. Why did they often retreat into silence? Why did thinkers, poets, and creators vanish into solitude as if it were a sacred temple? Because they understood that only there could they hear the voice of their own soul. Leonardo filled notebooks in silence. Nietzsche walked alone through forests until his feet bled. Kafka poured words onto paper in the quiet hours when the world slept. They did not escape life, they found it. Solitude was not punishment for them, it was survival, it was clarity. And here is the uncomfortable truth. If you cannot bear solitude, it is not solitude you reject, but yourself. You are not running from silence. You are running from the echoes of your own mind, from insecurities, from the regrets that crawl up when no one is around to distract you. This is why so many numb themselves with trivial chatter, bright screens, or empty companionship. It is not company they seek, it is anesthesia. But numbing does not heal. It only delays. Solitude is not a wound. It is the laboratory where wounds are healed. There, in the silence, you learn that you were never broken, only unfamiliar with yourself. Your anxiety was not born from being alone, but from never having met the depths of your own mind. And when you finally sit with it, observe it, and accept it, your mind stops being a cage and becomes a workshop, a place where you can polish your thoughts, order your emotions, and shape your vision. Picture this moment. You wake one day and realize you no longer need anyone to rescue you from your emptiness. You no longer fear the quiet. Your own thoughts are no longer torment but refuge. That day, love changes, friendships change, choices change. You no longer grasp desperately for affection. You no longer accept toxic bonds out of fear of silence. Instead, you choose wisely, deliberately, and freely. That day, solitude ceases to be a punishment and becomes a gift. And here is why society fears such a person. A human being at peace with solitude cannot be manipulated. They do not bend to the pressures of conformity. They are not bribed by shallow praise nor controlled by fear of rejection. They have passed the test. They are untamable. And the world, built on dependency and distraction, does not know what to do with such strength. Can you imagine the collapse that would follow if millions discovered this secret? If people stopped chasing recognition, stopped begging for scraps of attention, stopped fearing rejection? The system thrives on your dependence, but a person who embraces solitude is impossible to enslave. They are free in a way the world does not understand. That is why solitude is not merely the ultimate test of life. It is the birth of a kind of freedom no one can strip away. And the most extraordinary transformation happens not in how you see yourself, but in how you love others. For love born from dependency is never true love. It is need disguised as affection. But love born in solitude, from fullness rather than emptiness, is rare and pure. It is given freely, not taken desperately. Solitude, then, is the forge of maturity. Within it, need melts away, intention sharpens, and will is tempered. Out of it emerges a human being no longer enslaved by fear of abandonment, but liberated to give without condition. This path is not easy. It is a dark tunnel, yes, but at its end lies light. Light brighter than anything the noisy world could ever offer. And here is the wonder. The same solitude you once fled from can become the most powerful companion of your life. It teaches you to see clearly, to feel deeply, to live authentically. It transforms the mind from a restless cage into a sanctuary of strength. It does not demand you abandon the world. It allows you to re-enter it as someone unshakable, someone who does not beg for love but gives it, who does not chase freedom but carries it within. When you begin to walk deeper into the territory of solitude, something unexpected happens. At first, it feels like exile, as if you've been abandoned by the noise that once defined your sense of belonging. But over time, the silence starts to speak. It doesn't whisper sweet comforts. It delivers truths, raw, sharp, undeniable. Solitude does not flatter. It does not shield you from yourself. Instead, it lifts the veil over everything you tried to bury. Old wounds you thought had disappeared resurface. Traumas you numbed with distractions suddenly stand before you, like long-forgotten ghosts. This is the point where most run away again. They open the door, step into solitude, and when the shadows rise, they slam it shut and rush back into the crowd. But those who remain, those who have the courage to stay even when it hurts, discover that these shadows are not enemies. They are teachers. The fear, the pain, the regrets. They come not to destroy, but to be acknowledged. And once acknowledged, they begin to dissolve. Think of solitude as a fire. If you throw yourself into it carelessly, it burns. But if you stand long enough, if you endure its heat, it purifies. The illusions turn to ash, and what remains is your essence, untouched, resilient, and real. You begin to see that all the years you feared loneliness, what you were truly fearing was your own reflection. Solitude makes you face that reflection until you no longer tremble before it. And once you stop trembling, you realize the reflection is not a monster, but a child you abandoned long ago, waiting to be reclaimed. It is in that moment that creativity is born. Because once the noise is stripped away, once the masks fall, once the wounds are acknowledged, your mind opens like a sky after a storm. Ideas flow, clarity dawns, and vision expands. History has shown us this countless times. The poet who writes in the dead of night is not producing words because the world tells him to. He writes because solitude presses him to release what the noise of the crowd cannot hear. The philosopher who wanders in silence does not escape life. He dives into its depths. The artist who isolates themselves for years is not avoiding society, but touching truths society is too loud to notice. Solitude is not just about knowing yourself. It is about expanding yourself. It is the soil where seeds of creativity take root. Without it, you recycle the same patterns, repeat the same inherited voices, echo the same noise as everyone else. But, in solitude, your inner world becomes fertile, and from that soil arises originality, authenticity, vision. And yet, solitude doesn't only create, it also dismantles illusions about relationships. When you have walked through the fire of silence and survived, you no longer confuse attachment with love. You see with piercing clarity how often people bind themselves to others out of fear, not devotion. You notice how much of what we call love is merely a bargain. I will stay with you, so I'm not alone, and you will stay with me, so you are not alone. But love born from fear is fragile. It breaks at the first sign of rejection. The one who has befriended solitude, however, no longer enters relationships with empty hands. They do not seek to fill a void, but to share an abundance. And because of this, their bonds are stronger, purer, and freer. They do not cling, they choose. They do not demand, they offer. They do not collapse at rejection, because they were whole before it. Imagine how different the world would be if more people related this way, not as beggars of affection, but as givers of it. The secret few dare to admit is that the fear of solitude makes people easy to control. A person terrified of being alone can be manipulated with the smallest threat of rejection, bribed with shallow praise, enslaved by the promise of belonging. But once you pass solitude's test, that fear dies. And when fear dies, you become untouchable. You can no longer be bought by approval, enslaved by opinion, or caged by expectation. You belong to yourself. And that is the ultimate revolution, not political, not social, but personal. A revolution of the self. Because a person who has mastered solitude becomes a danger to the systems built on dependency. They cannot be sold meaning. They create their own. They cannot be told who they are. They already know. They cannot be herded into conformity. They walk their own path, not out of rebellion, but out of clarity. Think of solitude as the crucible in which your true self is forged. Inside, your false identities melt away. Your illusions burn off. Your wounds are exposed. And then, from that rawness, something new emerges. A self unchained. You become someone who doesn't fear silence but welcomes it. Someone who doesn't escape themselves but embraces themselves. And when you step back into the world, you carry with you a strength no applause can inflate. No rejection can diminish. Imagine sitting alone in a quiet room. No phone, no music, no voices, just you. At first, it may feel unbearable, as if the silence is pressing against your skin. But if you stay, if you breathe, if you stop running, you notice something miraculous. Your thoughts begin to settle like dust in sunlight. Your heartbeat slows. And beneath the noise of insecurity, beneath the chatter of fear, there emerges a deeper voice, the voice of your essence, the part of you untouched by comparison, untouched by fear, untouched by masks. That voice does not beg, It does not tremble. It simply is. That is the treasure of solitude, the rediscovery of yourself, the realization that your worth was never dependent on others, that your strength was never borrowed, that your freedom was never out there in the world. It was always within you, waiting in the silence. And once you find it, once you touch that core, life changes forever. You no longer chase meaning, you create it. You no longer crave approval. You stand in your truth. You no longer beg for love. You give it freely. You walk through the world with the quiet confidence of one who has already passed the test, who has already faced the mirror and survived. This is why solitude is not punishment. It is preparation. It is not exile. It is initiation. It is not the end of the path. It is the beginning of your true path. And when you pass through it, when you embrace it, you discover the only freedom that no power, no rejection, no failure can ever take away. Solitude is the ultimate test of your life. And if you endure it, if you learn to love it, you will never again fear being alone. Because you will know that in that silence, you were never truly alone. You were always with yourself. And that, in the end, is enough.